Welcome to Jimmy's Old Time Radio Show. I have an idea of complete genius. I have a project idea for recreation managers, a way for you to engage your residents. A collective interest around which you can build a facility club, and a fairly easy way to satisfy one of your resident needs, that for the love of music. This is something that if I was a recreation manager or an administrator, this is something I would initiate. So I encourage you to hear this through. But before I give that idea, I have to get the formalities out of the way. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet for all my virtual music programs and great ideas. I took a count this morning. Since I've been touring Canada, playing at retirement homes at coast to coast, since 2014, I've amassed 197 classic records. Basically, I count anything from, say, the mid-1970s and back as a classic. That makes me a classic. So what I'm proposing is a facility listening room, a record collection. Not every facility will have the space for this, but for those that can, this is a special project. You'll need a place to do it. You'll need some sturdy shelving. You'll need a record player. Ideally, you'll have an intimate room with comfortable seating, good acoustics, maybe some soft fabrics to absorb the sounds like curtains or quilts. Muted colors for ambiance. So here is the resident involvement part. You'll have a club, a music listening club, with a resident curator or a committee, someone in the population to maintain the collection. I'm sure there's some organized person among your group that would love to take on a project like that. Someone to keep it organized, someone to keep the records in the sleeves, someone to receive the new arrivals, someone to host events. The curator position would be a position of responsibility, and you could keep a running record of the curators. On the wall, you could list the curators that have taken care of that valued collection. It's history for the home, it's history for music, and it's history for the families. And as records arrive, as new residents arrive with their collections, the curator or the group can look through the new arrivals, find any doubles, select the better of the doubles. Sometimes there will be an older edition of a record arrive, or one with an older original sleeve, or one with any sleeve at all. There are different print runs to records, and a true collector might find value in these. And then when you do have doubles, you can set them aside for raffles or giveaways, prizes, or donate them back to the thrift shop. These records have been around for some time. You can expect maybe that they'll smell a little musty. They might smell smoky. So if you have serious allergies, this might not be a project for you. They have imperfections, they have scratches, they have warps. But if you ask me, a small amount of crackling as you're listening kind of adds charm, so long as the record isn't skipping. Sadly, if the record is too damaged, it's probably just garbage. But the cover, that still has value. You could use it to adorn your room. There is amazing artwork on these covers. Some of them are iconic. These days, we don't get the benefit of these 12 by 12 pieces of art. There is a whole visceral element missing nowadays. The sight, the sound, the feel, the touch, the art, the mold, the mildew. And music geeks would mostly all agree that music from vinyl sounds the best. It depends on the system you have, but it is a warm, welcome sound. There is history in these records. These are literally the soundtracks to your residents' lives. And listening to them can be a heartfelt activity. Nothing stirs you like an old favorite song. Nothing brings back memories the way music does. Right now, as of this moment, the bullseye for music for seniors, as of 2021, so if you were to approximate, say the average age of your population is 85. And I like to think about what did they listen to when they were 20. So we're going back 65 years. So that bullseye brings us to 1956. Music was bursting in those post-war years. Record production was starting to peak. Country music, big band music, jazz, the beginnings of rock and roll. The charts were full of amazing hits. Recording technology was becoming very good, highly advanced for the time. This is when the emergence of stereo was a thing, and a record player was an affordable luxury. These were simpler times before Netflix and the internet, and we look back on it now as history. Groundbreaking innovations, recording techniques that were changing the sound of music. So all these records, of course, would have to be donated by the residents and their families. There would have to be some kind of a signed agreement that they'd be turned over to the facility. Most of the records I have are given to the thrift shops from, I'm sure, families that were just disinterested. Children and grandchildren that just didn't want these old records. They didn't see the value in them. They themselves didn't have an interest in it, but your resident population sure would. I sometimes see on the records old signatures, and I wonder, what is the story? Who was this person? Why was the family not interested in preserving this history? Their family's history in this record. Hey, it's not for everybody. And that's why they end up in thrift shops and then eventually in my collection. Perhaps you're wondering, if you do put together a listening room, is it okay for the seniors themselves to handle these records? I would suggest yes, for the following reasons. These people know how to handle records. That's what they grew up with. They understand the simple rules. We had rules at home when I was a kid. How to handle the record. My dad was very careful about that. Always handle them by the edges. It's good to clean them every time you put them on. Keeps the needle clean. When you're finished listening, put it back in the sleeve, put it back on the shelf, and store them upright. Don't store them flat, because once they stack up, they get heavy, and the ones on the bottom will get scrunched. These vinyl grooves are kind of sensitive. So if you're dealing with a population that might have dementia or other ailments that might cause damage to the collection or self-injury, you're going to have to figure this out for yourselves, what you can actually accomplish. Gauge your needs according to your population. And about the stereo itself, you don't have to spend a lot of money. My record player cost me about $70 on Amazon. I don't have anything fancy. I like the sound of that little player because it sounds like the kind of machine that these records were intended to be played on. Perhaps you'll be gifted one of those big old ornate wooden record cabinets. They're wonderful, but you have to confirm that it works. It's a big piece of furniture and you want to make sure that it's functional. The wires and the knobs, the inner workings can corrode over time. Sometimes if you turn the knob, you'll get I used to have a beautiful old player that my parents bought in the 60s. Sadly, it ended up in the landfill. The idea of taking on the project of rewiring that machine, putting in new speakers, just building it from the inside out, finishing the wood, it was pretty daunting, and more than I could take on, and I couldn't even find a stylus for it. A stylus is the needle, also called a cartridge. Whatever record player you decide on, try to make sure it's one where you can get replacement cartridges if you need to. With proper care, the needle will last for years, but they can be delicate. You know, if it's dropped in the wrong way or too forcefully, or if it's slid across the record. This is recorded history. This is the stuff residents would appreciate. Can you imagine a nicer long-term project than this? And how wonderful would it be to flip through the records and hear some resident remark about the memories that come flooding back as they look at the covers. It's such a feel-good thing with a bigger purpose of preserving history. And should you not have space for a listening room, there's other alternatives. The dining room, the common area, even a nurse's station or the front desk could fit a small record player. The nurses might have something to say about that, but some of them might be cool because the music will have a calming effect. It'll lift the spirits of most of your residents. It could make your job easier. Ideally, you would have the records with the record player, but if the player had to be somewhere that wasn't a listening room, I guess you'd have to store them in the activity office or in some storage. Again, you'll need a sturdy shelf. So just a thought and some encouragement to my RT friends everywhere from Jimmy's Old Time Radio Show.